Hi, Hannah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Now, you're over in England. What part of England do you live in?
I'm 1 hour southwest of London, so I'm in a
Okay.
state called Surrey.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm
Yeah,
familiar with that just from geographically. I haven't been to England, but I'm familiar with it. Well, it's nice to have you here. And we're going to be discussing your latest book, and we'll bring up a couple of other books that you've written in the past that you're going to be contributing to that series. And that sounds interesting too. But
thank
before
you.
we continue, I'd like to know a little bit about yourself and who you are and how you got to the point where you're writing books.
Who I am. I, it was I didn't really know what that I was writing, despite having two parents who were writers. I, it wasn't an option for me. I didn't consider that. What I did find was in my 20s, I traveled a lot, lived abroad, lived in the States. Um, I would write in the back of filofaxes. You remember those? I would scribble stuff, and what I was actually doing, it turned out, was I was writing down to find out what I thought about things. And then when I was in my 30s and life had been gone a bit pear-shaped, my mother had died. Um, I wrote something for somebody's wedding to go in an album for their wedding. And they said to me, "You're really good at this. We think you should do more of this." And it wasn't until they said that I thought, oh, I really enjoyed writing it. And then slowly, I've always read a lot. And there was this one day where I read this book and I thought it was rubbish. And I was so cross that I'd spent the time reading it. And I thought, I could do better than that. And then there's this voice in my head just went, well, why don't you then? And I think it was, and I thought, right, I will. I'll sit down and I'll write a book, you know, talk about the conceit.
Hmm.
But I did. I sat down and I wrote a terrible, terrible book. It was very short and it was awful, but I loved it. And I sort of found I guess I'd found my niche, but I was very late to it. And I didn't, I was really naughty at school. I kind of stopped going to school when I was about 14 and I needed some proper education. So I went back to university and I got a master's in creative writing. And that really helped because that really helped
Absolutely.
formalize,
Yeah.
um, taught me how to read, taught me how to critique other people's work and to critique. But basically, what it did is that they made me write. They made me write and write and write and write and would teach me, well, this is good, this is not so good. So, and that was where it all started. And I did that in my early 40s. So I am a late bird. In the meantime, I trained as a paediatric nurse. So that was the day job.
Okay.
And I did that in my late 20s. So the writing has always been background. But as I got older, it's come ever more forward, as it were.
Yeah. Are you still working in nursing?
No, no. I stopped. I did a bit of work over COVID. I did some
Hmm.
work, um, but it was very hard when I had my daughter to get the shifts that I wanted with the NHS. It is more difficult, depending on your speciality. It's okay if you're in day surgery and things like that, but to get the hours to work around having a small child. So that was
Mm.
difficult.
Yeah.
But I did love it. I absolutely loved it. And I worked in infectious diseases and it was very busy, very hard. Um, not as not as difficult as a lot of people think, because when children are ill, we do everything possible to make them better.
Mm.
You throw everything you've got at them, and so actually most children get well,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and then but I also edit and I read for other established authors
Oh,
and
good.
stuff like that. So now I've got a little business
A
around
little
my
business
writing.
going on. That's
Yeah,
excellent. Yes.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we could always use more editors who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's very
Yeah,
easy to edit everybody else's work, I find.
it is. It is. I've done a
Right?
little bit of that myself, and
Hmm.
it's much easier. Yeah. Now, this book of yours that you've just recently published, I think it was last year in 2023, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
is called Breathing for Both of Us.
That is about my nursing. Actually, I've noticed that every book I've written, I've taken some kind of issue in my life and I've worked through it. And that one was the first adult book that I wrote, and it was about really about one little girl that I looked after who was so, I say people survive, and she did survive. She was so ill. Really didn't think she was going to survive, but she did, and she appears in that book. But that book is, once I've worked through my mother issues in that book, it's actually about big pharma. But I wrote it in about 2017, 2018, so before all of the OxyContin things. But it was about um, a lot of the time we used to give unlicensed drugs, antibiotics, to our children because we gave them in such big doses because these children were so ill, especially with things like meningitis. We used to give big doses of unlicensed drugs because the license was in the book and it said you can give this amount, but we would give much more than that to make sure that we really cleared the bugs from the system. And this book is a little bit about that. The drug, it's basically about bad big pharma in the background saying use this drug, use this drug. Very very like the OxyContin thing, really. Use this and everybody will get better. So it's just about a doctor who has terrible issues, but at the same time, she's trying to look after all these sick children. She gives a child a dose of an unlicensed drug, and she does it as a favor to a drug company, and the child dies. And then she realizes that this has been going on for quite a while and that there must be other children out there. And then it goes into it's just a classic. It's a mystery, actually. It's not a thriller. It's a mystery. It's just that her working through, but she's also got a lot of things she has to work through. And it was inspired by all the children I looked after. The families were amazing as well. The parents who it was a real privilege to do that as a job. It was really unbelievably hard work, but I saw some incredible things. And that book just came out of nowhere. That was obviously something, how things sort of sit at the
Hmm.
top of your subconscious, don't they? And they just sort of bubble away.
Yep.
And I've had other books that have been much harder to write, but that one wasn't. But it is dark, and I've had to put trigger warnings all over it.
Right. And how do you do that? How do you put trigger warnings?
Well, when I give the books away,
Right.
I make sure it's got a quote on it. It says that it's a gripping dark. It says it dark at the front, but
Yeah, it
also,
says right there. Yeah.
yeah, when I do the giveaway, I make sure you fill in these forms and that will show the blurb and everything like that. And on the form, I will be really clear about the types of things. So child death, eating disorder,
Mm.
you know, I'll make sure that the blurb has all of those things in them so that people who are thinking of downloading the book can see that before they download it, even though I
Wow.
know they're getting it for free,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
all over it's all
Right.
over the information.
Well, it seems to be a lot of that. Whenever I watch Netflix or any of the online movies or television shows, the first thing they show is that there's going to be smoking in this and some crude language, so beware.
I think I think it's possibly for those who are a bit younger than I am,
Mhm.
those trigger warning. It
Yeah.
didn't used to be a thing, but It's in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, I think. It
Yeah.
seems to have become a thing. Yeah.
You say breathing for both of us took you a couple of years to write?
I wrote it twice, actually.
Ah,
Yeah, I know. Um, but actually, yeah, it did take a couple of years. It took about uh, yeah, sort of 2017 to 2019, and then it went off on its merry way, and it got an agent, and things
okay.
were looking rosy, and she was really nice. I really liked her, and it went. She picked it up in January 2020, and she sent it out to. We made it all look sparkly and lovely, and we sent it out to the publishers in March 2020. Bearing in mind this is a dark book about the NHS in the UK.
Yeah.
And every publisher came back to her
Hmm.
because by this time our Prime Minister had gone into hospital with COVID.
Mm,
It literally went out that same week, which I can look
right.
at and start laughing about now. But it was I thought I wanted to be traditionally published, and this was going to be my big break. And all the publishers just came back and said, I'm terribly sorry. We're just looking for something warmer at the moment because
Yeah,
everybody's dying.
that's
We
right.
don't we don't want to read a book about
My
the
goodness.
NHS, right?
Exactly.
So bless her. So she came back to me and she said, don't worry, let's just put it to one side for the time being. So I rushed off and I wrote 20,000 words of the next book, and I sent them to her the following autumn. But she'd had some personal things that had happened over COVID, and she was downsizing as an agency, and she had to let me go.
Mm,
And she gave me that news just as I had to go into a doctor's office, who I got the message from her saying, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let you go, in the waiting room. And then I went into the doctor's office and she said, I'm terribly sorry, you're going to have an operation. And I was like, this is my all-time worst day, my worst day
absolutely.
ever. But it is quite funny, though, at the same
Mm,
time. And it was a
yeah.
very, very small operation. It was about this big of an operation.
Okay.
So I've got nothing to complain about. But the book that I kept on writing is now the one that I'm just about to bring out. So there was a bit of a delay with that one. That one was really difficult because I thought it might get another agent and it didn't. So I'm
Right.
publishing that one myself. Yeah.
Okay, so the book that you're now just talking about, is that the Isabella Rockwell series?
Those are children's books, the Isabella Rockwell Chronicles.
Okay.
And those were the first books that I wrote. And it's just a children's, I loved those stories, like A Little Princess
Yes.
and The Secret Garden. And I read all of those books when I was young. And it was kind of a homage to them, really. I think I've just ripped off A Little Princess, to be
Mm,
honest. But I've got a character. I read a lot of a writer called MMK, whose family were all brought up in India. Lots of Brits, the Raj in India. The English went there. They basically stole everything, but
yeah.
they set themselves up. They had people living in families living in India for 200 years. So you had a lot of English family children who grew up in India, never having visited England, and then being sent to school in England at the age of 13 or something, and arriving here in the winter from India, which is, the most bright, warm, colourful, vibrant place. And I just had her as a character and what it would be like. And I'd also lost my father. So I'd lost my mother quite young, and then I lost my father, and it was about her. So it was sort of about writing about that. And also, I grew up in New York, and then we moved over to the UK. And I found that really, I was only 7 or 6 or 7. but I did find it difficult. I remember it. I remember it very, very clearly.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, if I felt like that when I was coming over here, imagine what it must have been like for those kids coming over here from that country. And they were brought up by Indian people, those were their families.
Yeah.
So those books are they're just adventure stories about a girl who's brought up in India. She gets sent to England. That's the first book. And in the second book, she's back in India trying to find her dad. And I'm just about to start writing the third book. So even though it says I've lied on the cover basically by saying part of a trilogy, right? But I'm writing the third one. Yeah.
Do you think there'll be a fourth and a fifth?
Um, I don't think so at this point.
Okay.
Just because I suppose there could be. There could be because the older she gets, it starts coming up towards the Indian Revolution against the Brits, which was very bloodthirsty, and I could write all sorts of stuff around that. But I'm not quite there yet.
Right.
It could be, but I've only got this third one planned out.
Okay. And you told me earlier when we were off camera that you just came back from India.
I did just come back from India with a stomach virus, which is
Mhm.
making me a bit hot. So I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
keep wiping my
that's
nose.
okay. I'm curious,
um,
which part of India did you
I,
stay in?
I went up north to Rajasthan, and I
Okay.
went and did the Golden. Have you been there?
No, I really wanted to go, but I never made it.
Yeah, it's the Golden Triangle. They call it the Golden Triangle, and I think it's a very well-trodden tourist route, and it goes from Delhi to Agra. So we went to see the
Okay.
Taj Mahal, and then we went to Rajasthan to see the Pink Palaces and the Palace
Yeah.
of the Winds, and then up to Jaipur, which was just stunning. And we stopped at a tiger reserve along the way, and we saw a tiger, which I really wasn't expecting to see. I really was not expecting to see a tiger. And then we ended up in Udaipur, which is the place where the lakes, and you have those beautiful palaces along the lakes where they would go and sit on a very hot day. They would get the breezes. So I had a really lovely, extraordinary time, and I've got lots of ideas.
Good.
I've never done a research trip. I mean, I've never done a research trip
Is
before.
that your first time going to India?
Yeah, that was my first time.
Well,
Yeah. I
it'll
thought,
research trip,
yeah,
as you say, it can't hurt
yeah,
with your writing of these stories for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I had always thought, do you really need to research? I mean, can't you just make it up? Isn't that what we do? But actually, it's fantastic yeah, really fantastic.
Yeah,
What
I have to research in my fictional books, but I'm just since I created a world in my own head, there's nowhere for me to go.
it's the
But I
same.
still need to research,
You still, yeah, there's always something to do, isn't
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure, for sure.
yeah. What?
Well, this is lovely. Now, getting back to that first book, which is your more recent book, I'll bring it up here. A Breathing for Both of Us. Interesting title. How do you figure that?
Yeah, it's a bit funny, isn't it? Um, two things happened. One is that it's about the main character really loves her younger sister. Her mum was an alcoholic and uh, gives birth prematurely to a child with cerebral palsy, who's the younger sister. She also, a lot of people with cerebral palsy, they can often have, well, I shouldn't really say that actually, but they can have asthma and chest issues because they haven't got the strength to clear the lungs. Um, so that's this little character, that's what she had. So she's a severe asthmatic, and I won't give up too much away, but a lot of the book is about the older sister and the things that she has to look after. Her looking after her younger sister, basically, in the face of parental neglect. Um, So that was the breathing side of things. And then I'm going to give away too much, but have you heard of the book Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel?
I'm sorry, I'm not.
No, haven't heard that one. It's she writes historical fiction, which I love,
No,
and
me
she's a
too.
very good English writer, and she used she was so clever with her first book. She managed to end her book with the title, with its title. And when I read this, I
Okay.
was so impressed and sort of was just sort of blown away how she'd
Mhm.
managed to make it all come to that
Yeah.
point that I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to do this. I love the arrogance that I have, and I haven't pulled it off at all. But I did want to. It did manage to sort of all come to. I know I've completely given it away, but I don't think I don't think
No,
it
you
matters.
haven't.
But I did
It's
want to
intriguing. Yeah.
end with that was the whole it's the whole overarching sort of theme, and to end with that, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. So that's why that is there. I don't think I
Okay.
knew what the title was going to be right up until the end, actually.
Oh,
So
really? Yeah,
that's yeah,
that's good.
that was it.
That's
Yeah.
always, it can be a struggle getting the right title for sure. The picture, how did that picture come about?
I had a really nice guy who designed my covers for the children's books. But what we were trying to do, because it's a medical thriller, it was looking very mm, medical thrillers all look quite harsh. They all have quite harsh covers, and that doesn't quite suit this book. And so, because covers are always by genre, aren't they? You sort of can look at a
Hmm.
cover and go, that's a thriller, that's a romance, that's a psychological, you know. So I went to Instagram and I just Googled book cover designers because they're all there.
Yeah.
And I found the most fantastic. I just loved everything she'd done. And she did a lot of fantasy too, actually. But her covers were so thoughtful. And I just thought, I wonder if she's not gonna want to write and do this. But she did, and she just came up with it. And I thought, oh God, that's perfect. The only thing we were slightly worried about was the slight sort of, does it look like it's a fetish? But I think we've got away with it, and it doesn't. But it's got the breathlessness of the with the stethoscope around the neck, and that was kind of all we needed to say. That
Well,
was that was it. So that's how we did that. Yeah.
excellent. So when Breathing for Both of Us came out, obviously not a children's book, how did you switch gears in terms of people who have been following your books? Would they still be interested in buying this book as well?
When I do giveaways and things,
Mhm.
I go out to different audiences. So even but having said that, I initially put Breathing for Both of Us out as HP Parry, but doing social media for two different types of books is very unlikely because I'm too lazy to do it. I just will do it for Hannah Parry. And when I think about the people who I've read J.K. Rowling, whether she's J.K. Rowling, Robert Galbraith, I'll read anything she writes. I'll read anything Hilary Mantel writes. I'll read anything Martin Amis writes. Whoever they're writing for, I'll read it. It doesn't matter to me whether it's children, adult, if I like a writer. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm going to risk it. So long as I've got the trigger, make sure that they know that breathing is something completely different, which it is clearly, then I'm just going to keep it all as Hannah Parry and keep them. And then the next one coming out is an adult book. So I have I have two children, and eventually the third one will come out of the children's ones. Um, and I think people are bright enough to work it out. But I didn't actually, John, have many followers. I mean, I've got followers on Instagram and things, but I don't have an active readership list that I'm engaging with. I'm building one up. I've done my first, I finally got my first email list of my email list when I can engage with people one-to-one. So I've only just started that.
You mentioned you have a website. You want to talk about that?
Well, my website is very easy. It's just hannahparry.com. You can see everything there. You can see all the books. You can read snippets. You can order if you want to. You can sign up for any updates and new releases and things like that. And the inaugural email as well, email letter that I'm hoping will come out soon.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
You have any final words on breathing for both of us? Sort of like a pitch, and you can encapsulate why this book is something people should order and remind them where they can get it.
I think if you're a reader and you really liked books by Gillian Flynn, not necessarily Gone Girl, but Sharp Objects. You like a bit of psychological fiction too. It's not crime, but more psychological mystery, if that is your thing. And you don't mind a bit of sadness, or you like to be moved by your reading, then I think you would enjoy this book. It's got some really nice reviews. I'm really thrilled that people seem to like it. So I hope you enjoy it too. And it's available from Amazon in whichever country you're in, or you can go to my website, which is hannahparry.com, and click on any of the links there and you can buy it. But I also, if you join I can't just realize this, if you join my mailing list, I will let you know when it's free, because I give these books away every 90 days. I will have a free day. So I'm really happy for you to do that too.
Excellent. Very good. That was very nice. Hannah, it's been such a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, thanks.
You're always welcome back. You know, you seem to be writing more books, and I love repeat interviews or conversations, having friends back and talking some more. So,
oh, that would be great.
Be in touch for that.
I will for sure. Thank you very, very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too. Me too. Well, you take
Thanks,
care of
John.
yourself, Hannah.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment if you wish. And if you are an author, I would sure love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing, and remember to be kind to one another.